Talking about SN, moral economy and fair pricing, which is a
We've got the
really
right person
big
for that
topic
as
for the
well.
hour.
We've got Mr.
Exactly.
Fahim Sardar, the Managing Director of Tangent. And sir, before going forward, I'd like to recite some verses of the Holy Quran which say that believers do not devour another's possession wrongfully, rather let there be trading by mutual consent. Now, talking about mutual consent and fair trade, how do you see an Islamic system of fair trade prevailing in Pakistan?
Thank you for having me. And this is not just a Pakistani topic. It's not a topic we're talking about right now. This is also a topic which has, without the Islamic terminology, started to pervade across the world. Because in every aspect of Islam, we have to talk about sustainability. Everything has to be sustainable
Absolutely,
for something to progress. You cannot have high taxes and have a sustaining economy. You cannot have low taxes and have a sustaining economy. Zakat, for example, is a natural spillover of wealth towards the less fortunate. Now, if you look at what the purpose is very simple: to have a fair trade regime in Pakistan means everyone gets an opportunity to trade and to make money.
Right.
When you make money, you spend money. When you spend money, the economy starts to grow.
Absolutely.
At the same time, we pay our dues as well. For example, zakat, taxation, and everything. There's a reason, for example, zakat is only 2.5% of unused wealth.
Yeah.
And that too with severe caveats. Not everything is taxed. But what is the present day debate in the evening news? Taxation, taxation, taxation. So there is a balance that we need to strike. In Pakistan, what we are, I think, trying to go towards is to have a more active trading regime, a more active trading scenario. Now let's take a piece out of history. At the time of Shah Jahan, who was a king of unified India,
Yeah.
so what we call India right now, subcontinent. 27% of the world's GDP was with Shah Jahan.
Right.
I'll say that again. 27% of the world's GDP, which is larger than the size of the United States of America at present,
Yeah.
was in this territory.
That's
so
huge,
I actually
yeah.
broke that up into the countries that exist. We should have had 8% of GDP. Now, it's a very simple question. How did we become so big?
Right.
Through trading.
Okay.
Everyone had a little SME or small business or cottage business, whatever you want to call it, and everybody was trading, something that you just pointed towards, and they were trading at a good price, a fair price. We have to understand that Islamic societies have to be symbiotic, not parasitic. And when we look at predatory pricing, or when we look at the extreme form of capitalism, that's actually quite predatory.
Yes.
And that's not symbiotic, it's parasitic.
Because there's a sharing of resources as well. You earn, and then you also have to look after the ones that are less fortunate. And you also mentioned sustainable development. So I'm going to, bring in our other guests as well. Nurulan, what would you like to say about that? Sustainable development is a concept that you develop, and you do your, business, and you develop your economy and everything, but you keep in mind the needs of the current generation as well as future generations. So you're not totally, overcome with consumption at the moment, so that other people are left without resources that they need now and in the future.
Absolutely. So the fundamental aspect of sustainable development is that it has to be inclusive.
Yes.
So you're covering people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, and then you're creating an economy in which the rich are feeding the poor as well. So absolutely. So sustainable development comes with that level of inclusion.
Well, 1/5 of the total population of the world identifies themselves as Muslims. Now, free and fair trade, the partnership based on fair and transparent trade means that they have some rights for buying and selling, and there are some Islamic business ethics. Now, Mr. Sardar Fahim, I'd like to ask you, can you highlight those ethics, the Islamic business ethics? We believe that you've even written 3 books.
4 actually, because I'm writing my 5th one. So, yes, Islamic business ethics. Look, you just can't cheat. and you can't do anything that's going to cheat or cause something to be cheated. Now, I'll say this in pure economic terms: demand and supply. It is the foundation of economics, and this is even in Islamic terminology, this is correct. Although I have severe disagreements with many of the economic theories that we study, as they just purport something else. But looking at the very basics, whenever demand or supply is altered or caused to be altered, then there is a fictitious price. Now, I'll give you two extreme examples which produce this result, and both of them are un-Islamic. Because the moment you see, Islam is very free. You have to be free. You have to. That's how you grow. Your demand is free, supply is free, but it is regulated by the state. Regulated, not controlled. Regulated.
Regulated.
Now, take for instance hoarding. Hoarding, what does hoarding do? It takes away the supply from a society or from a market, which raises the price.
Absolutely.
Now the supply is already there, but it's not being brought to the market. So what happens is the price goes up. Once the price goes up, then they bring the supply into the market
For more profitability.
exactly at a higher price.
Right.
That is wrong. That is wrong ethically. That is wrong economically. That is wrong, of course, in Islamic terms. Now let's look at the other side. What happens if suddenly somebody says that, the water that you drink from the tap, we're from Islamabad. I mean, I remember drinking tap water like anything. And of course there are issues, but what if somebody suddenly says that, oh, it's all contaminated?
You won't drink it.
You won't drink it. What will you drink? You have to drink something.
Water.
Bottled water. So the demand of tap water goes down and the demand for tap water goes up. So once again, the demand and supply intersection is altered. You cannot alter or cause to be altered.
That's against the business ethics.
Bringing this all into perspective right now, during Ramadan, why are we seeing so much price hikes and like price gouging
Isn't
and all
it
for
supposed
goods
to be
in the
the other way
markets?
around? Because we've seen people in the Western side of the society
Giving discounts and
whenever
sales.
there is Christmas or a Black Friday or something like that.
You
You've got absolutely. Why isn't it in most of the Islamic nations? We've seen the example of Indonesia as well. There was a news earlier on that Indonesia has seen a price hike in commodities and FMCGs as well during the month of Ramadan.
I would just offer some thoughts to that, and forgive me if it's purely economic or purely capitalistic. It's simple predatory pricing, because we see what happens is when a rise in demand happens right before or during Ramzan. Rise in demand of what? Land? No.
No, it's food. It's vegetables and fruit.
Okay,
Fruit, basically.
Yeah, air travel,
Fast-moving
no.
consumer goods.
It's basically for food.
Absolutely.
Food, and with specific reference to very
dry ration.
basic
Yeah.
dry rations, subsistence level foods. Now, all of a sudden, what happens to the supply? You need, okay, let's say the supply is constant and the demand rises a little bit. Fine, the price goes up a little bit, but then increase the supply. That's the simple rule of business.
So the vendors that you're seeing in the mandis, then the fact that they're raising the prices, okay, maybe they're not informed or maybe they're just trying to be opportunistic. How can that be controlled by, for example, the government? Should they increase the supply of these goods?
Yes.
Okay, to government.
You have to allow demand and supply to be free. Any person, whether it's me or someone else or some organization or some concept that alters demand and supply at any level, in any way, they are altering the natural level of the price. Now, if you look at, there is no reason for things to become so expensive. In China, going to the east, 350 million people travel in their holidays. 350 million people travel in their holidays. Some say Beijing becomes empty, but the prices don't change.
Okay, Fahim Sahab, yeah, it's time for the program of
this special transmission, The Spirit of Ramzan, only on PTV World. I hope you got to learn a lot from Mufti Milk and a very knowledgeable scholar, Shameen.
Indeed, Ehsan. And before we started his program, we were talking about something very interesting about the price gouging going on right now during Ramadan. We were
Absolutely.
talking to
We have
Fahim
Mr.
Sardar.
Fahim Sardar,
Yeah.
who's the managing director of Tangent, and he was telling us about the economy and how the price management is done during the month of Ramadan, specific to the price hike.
Exactly, and how it should be curbed by the authorities. So please continue with what you were saying. You were saying that the supply should be increased.
I'm glad you said how it should be curbed, because I got the impression that I'm telling people how to hike the prices.
No.
So it's you can control price through various ways, and throughout the world you have, look, if something is demanded, supply it.
Yeah.
We're not talking about high-tech equipment. We're not talking about imported items.
We're talking about basic necessities.
Basic.
And it's great we're talking about solutions right now. We're not just complaining about why it's happening. Yeah.
We in Tangent, we believe in solutions. We don't. Problems are like 30% of the discussion. 70% of the discussion
And
should
that's
be
the need of the hour,
solutions.
Right.
If I can just bring in one small factor, one of the reasons that unethical reasons that prices are controlled, or let's say adjusted before and during Ramzan, is the quantum. Because we are predominantly a Muslim country, and predominantly we will be fasting. So predominantly we will be part of that economic behavior. So predominantly, this is not a segment. It is a huge number. Just put the numbers to it.
Absolutely.
If, let's say,
Massive,
even 150 million, we are 220 million. Let's say 150 million are fasting, and they become part of this economic circle of pre and during Ramzan purchases. Just multiply that with a basic number, and you get a huge quantum. So people are basically inclined to make some money out of it.
Right, we'll come back to you, but I would like to share some verses of the Holy Quran which say, "And give full measure when you measure, and weigh with a balance that is straight."
Absolutely. Mamoon Yusuf, he's a best-selling author of Inside the Soul of Islam. We were just talking about opportunistic practices going on right now during Ramadan, where obviously there's a huge, you're talking about large numbers. Fahim Saab was just talking about large numbers consuming all these items. So obviously there's a huge potential for big profits. But at a time like this, should you really be thinking about profits, or should you be thinking about the people and their needs being fulfilled? And okay, fine, you have the vendors level, and then we're talking about the state level. What do you think should be done?
Well, for me, the interesting thing in this whole discussion is, how come demand for food goes up? It's Ramadan, right? This is meant to be a spiritual process of
That's a very interesting point.
controlling your
Yes.
nafs. Seriously. Like, I know it's very common and it's very cultural, but if Ramadan is really going to be a source of transformation for us, if anything, our consumption should go down. So, not just in terms of buying and selling, but also
That's
just in
where
terms of
hoarding comes in.
Yes, and the funny thing is, you see right before, since you mentioned that, right before Ramadan, you see all the shops are flooded with people buying the rations and things like that.
Yeah.
I myself have to admit, because I thought, okay, maybe during
That's what we
Ramzan,
did.
I'm going to get lazy and I won't go out and buy whatever. So I went and got it beforehand. But, you know, because you're thinking, maybe I can't function so well when I'm fasting, right?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in change happens from the inside out. From inside of each individual, we change. Like Allah says in the Quran, Allah will not change the state of a nation until they change ma bi anfusihim, what is in their nafs. So literally what's inside yourself. So the simple question we can all ask is, in terms of consumption, is during Ramadan, do you gain weight or lose weight?
That's another
a very
important question.
important
Most of the people that we talk to during Ramadan are
gain
on
weight.
their diet.
Yeah.
And they're somehow trying to lose their weight, but that's not the cause of Ramadan. We need to focus on being pure, and need to focus on what the teachings of Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, told us. So we believe that you are also the best-selling author of Inside the Soul of Islam. You're also a Muslim life coach. What would you say regarding the topic that we have, morals in business, moral economy, to be specific?
Yeah. Like I said a moment ago, it starts, for me as a coach, I don't know how to change the whole global economy. What I do know is how to talk with one person in a way that can help them change their life. And so all of ethics ultimately is done by individuals. And the whole purpose of Ramadan is كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Fasting is prescribed for you as it was prescribed to those before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can gain more taqwa.
Right.
As our taqwa increases, all of the other problems decrease.
Can you describe taqwa for those of us who are
Sure.
illiterate
So
in Islamic
taqwa
word?
is consciousness.
Consciousness.
It's awareness. It's being aware of Allah's presence in everything you do. And as this increases, Ramadan is one method of increasing this. Every time you get hungry, every time you get thirsty, there should be this immediate Allah. Allah is present. And that's why all the way through Ramadan, al-sabr is essential. It's the thing that keeps you going throughout the entire process.
And that's really
Absolutely,
the
sabr
whole,
and
yeah.
shukr.
Absolutely.
Patience is very important. They are
Yes.
the two parts of faith in Islam.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
the whole essence of Islam really is doing everything, keeping Allah in mind and doing it for Him. So maybe I won't want to do something for X, Y, Z because I don't feel like it, but it's the right thing to do and it's for Allah, so you do it, right? So that's one of the biggest, I feel, concepts of Islam. Nurul and Zafar, I wanted to ask you, because you're an entrepreneur and you organize Islamic retreats for women. We're talking about the moral economy. How do we fit women into that? Because as we know, women are 50% of Pakistan. And we also know that they're underrepresented where entrepreneurship is concerned, where small business, there are very small number of them are business
women
owners.
empowerment is sometimes misinterpreted as well in the society.
Yeah, but we're talking about empowerment financially, economically. We're talking about being small business owners, being employed, being educated, and owning assets. So, what would you like to say about that in light of Islam and Ramadan?
Yeah, so I'll just connect what Mamoon was saying regarding taqwa. So it's such a simple concept that, you know, when Allah says that you have to put your faith in Him, then it is in everything. So same goes for if we're trying to lead a moral economy, and if we're trying ourselves as entrepreneurs to, you know, start up something. I'll just give you my personal example that as a woman who wanted to, you know, set up an own entrepreneurial venture, it was just based on that taqwa. That if I am putting myself and my soul into this, then there is a mighty power that is going to make sure that it works for the success.
And you're doing it for the greater good.
And
you're
we're doing it for the
people's
greater
benefit.
good.
That's
Absolutely.
probably what
And
you were
your
thinking
point
as well.
about women empowerment and how basic the concept is, I always believe, and the retreat that you mentioned that is taking place, it's all just called Light the Soul, which is that you dig down and see that what is it that we can do on a daily basis. It could be as small as, you know, just picking up a garbage from your neighborhood and just cleaning your area, or it could be something very big that, you know, you're mashallah offering all of your 5 prayers daily, and
It's
you're
the little
making
things
that
that
connection
matter, right?
It is the
with
little
God.
things that matter.
And that is essentially that, you know, we need to have a constant reflection on that what are those good things and what is it that the religion teaches us. A lot of the discord with what Fahim was also saying was, I believe, and it's a very personal reflection, that a lot of discord is because somewhere along the line our understanding about what the teachings are is somewhere along the line it's just very flawed. So we believe that, you know, Islam is a religion of peace, it's a religion of tranquility, and it's a religion of love. And if you break it into bite-sized pieces, you will have a reflection in all of your daily lives dealings, and that is essentially
before
what
we
we try
go
to do.
towards another program's link, I'd like to ask Mr. Fahim just one question. We talked about the country and the Islamic principles being used during business. Is there a riba-free economy?
Yes, there is. I've written a book about it, and it's an unfair question because the answer is slightly long. A quick answer is yes, there is. However, it requires 2 things. One, it requires a solution, which I have proposed. You know, it's up for debate. Second, which is more important, is it requires a psychological desire, a will to bring that change.
Okay, this is very important. But
Well,
let's go to the program and then we can come back.
We'll come back and discuss more about riba-free
Yes,
economy.
absolutely.
Riba obviously is interest for those people who don't know.
About riba with Fahim Sardarsa, because in today's program we're talking about the moral
Fair
economy and
pricing
fair
and fair
pricing in Islam, which is so important right now because we're seeing all kinds of practices.
So, sir, as you were telling us about, is there a riba-free economy
And I would like to know also personally that if you want to invest money in Pakistan, and it's a Muslim country, where can you do so where there's no interest involved? Because obviously you want a return on your investment.
And then there are different fatuhat about investing and then
Exactly.
doing business on an interest-free basis. What
And
do you have
it's
to
always
say
called,
about that?
it's often called profit. But which part of it is riba and which part of it is halal? Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, I'll try to be I'll try to be as clinical as I
Yes.
possibly can, because I don't have the luxury of saying I don't know, because I do know.
Yes.
Okay, what is known as interest is anything on a loan.
Okay.
For example, in my book, The New Finance Construct, which is available throughout Pakistan, I describe interest from goats.
Okay.
From an example of goats. If I give you 4 goats and I want 5 in return after 1 year, so isn't that riba? 1 goat is riba. That's 25% interest.
Okay.
Okay. So then you move on to a financial transaction. Okay, if I give you 100 rupees and after 1 year I want 125 rupees, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Something on a loan. Now here is where, now you have to just bear with me, okay? What is wrong with interest? What interest does is interest isolates risk. Interest isolates risk on one party and it gives the return to the other party. In a moral economy, in good business, risk and return are proportionate. Risk rises, return
Absolutely.
rises.
High risk, high
Okay.
return, low risk, low
Absolutely.
return, no risk,
goes
no return.
down, return should go down, right? What interest does is it warps it.
Okay. So you don't get the right perception.
Exactly.
Of the risk.
Haven't you ever
Okay.
wondered why banks survived for 200 years? Haven't you ever thought about that?
Yeah.
Anyway,
And also, I mean, debt, when you have interest, then you have countries and you have individuals and drowning in debt, you know. So that's another
exactly.
problem.
That's
with
something
debt.
I've talked about in detail in my book, and I've proposed solutions to it, active solutions to it.
We'd like to hear those solutions.
Yeah, sure. It's on page 125 for those who are interested.
We have so many
interested.
questions.
So the fact of the matter is, when an economy uses a central pricing mechanism, every economy they have been evolved towards this structure where there is a central pricing mechanism. One change in that pricing mechanism changes everything else. That central pricing mechanism is the society's interest rate. Okay, so in order to take that away and to have an alternative, it's possible. I've even proposed it in my book. However, we come to a bigger problem, which is the psychological and desire.
We'll talk about that problem, but we have to go towards a short break. We have news that's to follow. We'll be coming back to Mr. Fahim and discuss more about moral economy, but after this short news break. Stay tuned to BTV World. Welcome back to this special transmission, The Spirit of Ramadan, only on PTV World. Earlier we were talking about moral economy and fair price. We have our guests with us, Mr. Fahim. We were talking about the moral economy, the riba-free economy as well. You were telling us something about how you can deal with
debt, and we're talking about how to make investments that are not with interest.
Okay, first of all, let's get one thing very straight here. You and I. Okay, I can't exclude myself from this statement. I can't include myself in this statement, but you are not responsible for the economy.
Yeah.
You are not responsible for a monolithic concept that has been brought into manifestation over the past 400 years.
Yeah. But individually, we're responsible for our choices. Aren't we?
If there are choices, if there are choices,
we have to make choices.
Now,
but are
for
there
example,
choices?
yes, there are choices. You first of all, you can't make things difficult for yourself because
Yes.
there is no alternative. Now, you can basically choose, let's say, real estate investments over, let's say, hardcore debt investments. So that is a clear choice. However, everywhere you go, you will find that single pricing mechanism. I have been very vocal about this. I have written a book about it. I have been on forums. I have been proposing this. I have gotten bankers to sit with me and we talk about it. But the solution does not lie with the average man or woman.
Yeah, it's a system.
It is a system. It is a concept. That's why the point number two, the problem number two, is more difficult. Getting people to accept. I think it was Voltaire who said that the worst kind of slavery is that in which you put chains upon yourself.
Yes, like a mortgage.
Yeah,
It's
and even a mortgage is something that you can pay off. That's not an issue. But accepting a system and refusing to accept an alternative, that's where people
Change is a slow and gradual process.
Yes, and it has to be brought in. So that's where, for example, people like me, we're trying to bring in that change. It's not easy. It's an uphill task. It's like a trial by fire. It's like it's a baptism of fire. Sorry to use that word, but anyway, what I'm saying is, as a normal human being, as a typical Muslim, you should just try to avoid things that are unethical. Try to avoid them.
Okay, how do you avoid, for example, a person in my situation where you have to take a loan? For example, I'm sending a son to university in August, and he's going to the US, so there's student loans, and those obviously involve interest. So how do you
That's
actually?
a necessity.
Those are necessities, but still, you feel like, okay, now I'm getting my child into this interest system and all. How do you avoid things like these? Are life
The
decisions.
first thing you
that
do
one
is
has
you
to-
send your child over to me for career counseling, and then after that they will be thinking differently.
Okay.
And there will be other solutions that they can look at.
Yeah.
But once you're going into a system, you cannot go in unless you can change it. You see, that system was brought in by geniuses,
Yeah.
by empires. Let me confuse you even more, because I mean, I've debated this thing endlessly. Why is interest deductible? Have you ever thought about that? Why is interest tax deductible?
Right. Why?
It's written nowhere in the annals of history. It's written nowhere. That's the favoritism given to interest. So you can't undo 500 years of colonialism
Yeah.
overnight. However,
So
if
that's the system of that
you
particular
have
place.
to at least desire to change the system. Right now, I'll give you a global perspective, then our friends also have to talk. Islamic finance is a buzzword, and truth be told, it's not Islamic. It is towards Islamic, but it's not Islamic finance.
So you mean to say that all the Islamic banks that are working in Pakistan right now
That's a tricky subject.
Okay, let's
No,
not go there.
I'll just take the trick out. It's not. Baat khatam. I mean,
They're not Islamic.
You have to look at the pricing mechanism. How are you pricing a transaction? In my book, page 125, I've given a new formula which works.
Say, if there's no Islamic bank there, what do you suppose a person do? Save money and add his own?
No, as I said, it's not your job or our friend's job to fix the system, because you weren't designed to fix it. You were designed to do something else.
Right.
So those people who understand finance, they have to fix it.
Okay, great. So
So
now
those were some key questions
yeah.
that we needed to know
Yes.
in the light of Islam during this spirit of Ramadan, the special transmission. We're going to move towards our other guests now. Mr. Mamoon Yusuf, the best-selling author inside of The Soul of Islam, the Muslim life coach as well. We'll talk about patience, sabr.
Yeah. First, let me just say it's a relief that I don't have to fix the global economy. I was really getting worried as you were talking, so thank you.
Right, so talking
It's a
about
huge task.
patience now, everything
anyone.
as coming from Allah is a test, they say.
Yes.
Now, patience is a virtue which enables individuals to proceed towards the worthy goals. How do you see, how does patience reflect in your own life, and how do you teach people to be more patient in their
Sure.
lives?
Counterintuitively, I will say this in the words of Rocky Balboa. It doesn't matter how hard you can hit. What matters is how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And that's like the essence of sabr. You know, a lot of the time sabr is translated as patience. I like to think of it as resilience, right? It's your ability to, no matter what's going on around you, you can handle anything. And how do you gain that? Well, there are two spiritual keys. The first is, if you want more sabr, don't ask Allah for more sabr. Because what are you really asking for? Tests. It's the last thing you want. If you're asking Allah for more sabr, you're essentially making dua that Allah gives you more and more tests and challenges and death and war. In fact, don't do that. There's a much smarter way of doing it. Ask Allah for more shukr.
Shukr.
Because as you said
Yes,
earlier on,
gratitude.
very
Gratitude.
precisely, shukr and sabr, gratitude and resilience, they're twin qualities. As you increase in one, your capacity for the other increases. So there's this spiritual tool that Allah, in His infinite wisdom, gifted us to increase as much as we can imagine in both.
That is so beautifully said, Mamoon. At the moment, we're going to go towards a program called Key Questions in Ramadan because that is so important. That's the need of the hour
That's
right
the
now.